Did you know that certain words of the Quran hold profound power, capable of transforming our spiritual and material lives? Among them, Ayat Al-Kursi and the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah stand out for their power. These verses are not mere words, but spiritual keys that open the door to divine protection, wisdom, and light from Allah. But what is the real secret hidden behind their daily recitation? Today, we will delve into the essence of these sacred verses, explore their hidden power, and understand how practicing them for 7 consecutive days can transform your life. Are you ready to discover this intimate connection with Allah and transform your existence? 1. The Call to Divine Power. Introduction to the importance of Ayat Al-Kursi. Allah. There is no God except Him, the living, the self-subsisting. Neither drowsiness nor slumber overtakes Him. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:255. At the heart of the Quran lies a verse of unfathomable depth, a verse that resonates as a call to divine greatness, Ayat Al-Kursi. This verse, the 255th of Surah Al-Baqarah, is recognized as the most majestic in the sacred book. He declares, Allah, there is no God except Him, the living, the self-subsisting. Neither drowsiness nor slumber overtakes Him. Reciting Ayat Al-Kursi is a practice deeply rooted in Islamic tradition, providing spiritual protection and upliftment of faith. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "He who recites Ayat Al-Kursi after every obligatory prayer, nothing prevents him from entering paradise except death." Diyara far. But beyond this promise, what is the true hidden power of this verse? Why is its recitation so sacred and powerful? A question for you. Have you ever felt divine protection, deep peace, after reciting this ayah? How has this transformed your view of spirituality? Is the repetition of this prayer an act of submission or divine power? Inspiring story. One day, a man went to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, asking him how to protect himself from the evils of the world. The Prophet advised him to recite Ayat Al-Kursi after every prayer, and thus peace and divine protection accompanied this man throughout his life. Reciting Ayat Al-Kursi is more than just an act of devotion. It is a key that opens the door to unparalleled divine protection. It wards off negative influences, soothes the heart, and strengthens faith. Every word spoken is an affirmation of Allah's sovereignty, a reminder of His constant presence and infinite mercy. By meditating on the divine attributes mentioned in this verse, the believer is invited to deep introspection, purification of the soul, and spiritual elevation. The repetition of this prayer thus becomes an act of conscious submission, a reconnection with the Creator, and an affirmation of His omnipotence. Thus, regular practice of reciting Ayat Al-Kursi becomes a powerful way to get closer to Allah, strengthen one's faith, and find inner peace. She is a shield against life's trials, a source of light in the darkness, and a constant reminder of divine greatness. By integrating this practice into our daily lives, we open ourselves to a multitude of spiritual blessings and benefits, thereby strengthening our connection with the Almighty and finding in Him our refuge and support. 2. The hidden power of the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. The perfect guidance from Allah, He gives it to you by opening your heart to His word. The last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah are spiritual treasures, containing invisible but powerful blessings and protections. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever recites the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah during the night, they protect him from everything." Ajib.fr. These verses, revealed at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, are of capital importance for the believer. They begin with, "The messenger believed in what was revealed to him from his Lord, as did the believers." Surah Al-Baqarah 2:285, and end with, "Allah does not impose on anyone except what he is capable of." Surah Al-Baqarah 2:286. Reciting these verses before sleeping is particularly beneficial. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever recites the last 2 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah during the night, they protect him from everything." Ajib Dafar. This practice offers protection against negative influences, bad thoughts, and nighttime temptations. A question for you: why are these verses so powerful that they can protect your heart and soul in sleep? Do you believe that the act of reading these verses before sleeping can bring transformation to your life? Inspiring story. Once a man found himself in a situation of great difficulty, undergoing a series of trials and tribulations. A friend advised him to recite the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah every night before going to bed. Little by little, his situation transformed, and he found inner peace. The power of these verses lies in their ability to transform an individual's spiritual reality. Reciting these verses before bed is also recommended to ward off demons and bad influences. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Do not make your houses cemeteries." Satan, in fact, flees the house where Surah Al-Baqarah is read. Tawaf. So, by integrating this practice into your nighttime routine, you create an environment conducive to tranquility and divine protection. These verses are also a source of guidance and mercy. They remind the believer of Allah's mercy and His ability to forgive. Reciting these verses strengthens faith and trust in Allah, while bringing deep inner peace. By meditating on the deep meaning of these verses, the believer is invited to spiritual introspection, purification of the soul, and spiritual elevation. The repetition of this prayer thus becomes an act of conscious submission, a reconnection with the Creator, and an affirmation of His omnipotence. Thus, the regular practice of reciting the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah becomes a powerful way to get closer to Allah, strengthen one's faith, and find inner peace. She is a shield against life's trials, a source of light in the darkness, and a constant reminder of divine greatness. 3. The power of daily recitation. Power in 7 days. If you recite these verses 100 times a day for 7 days, you will feel a profound change in your life. In the Islamic tradition, the recitation of sacred verses goes well beyond a simple or one-off act. It is an integral part of purification of the soul and spiritual elevation. When a believer engages in reciting Ayat Al-Kursi 100 times a day for 7 days, he is not just reciting words. He initiates a transformation that goes beyond appearances, a profound change in his spiritual and material life. This practice is a path to inner peace, a door to a divine blessing that knows no limits. Why 7 days? The number 7 in Islam is a symbolic and powerful number. It is associated with concepts of perfection, completeness, and renewal. In several hadiths, it is mentioned that practicing for 7 days allows you to forge a solid relationship with Allah and purify your soul in a lasting way. The 7th day becomes a time of spiritual alignment, a junction between the human and the divine where blessings are fully manifested. A question for you: why 7 days? Why does this specific duration seem to play an essential role in the process of purification and spiritual renewal? How can a daily practice of Ayat Al-Kursi ease your spiritual and material burdens? Inspiring story. There is a story of a man faced with a series of financial and spiritual trials who sought a way to overcome his difficulties. He heard about the power of Ayat Al-Kursi and decided to recite it 100 times every day for 7 days, as an act of faith. At first, nothing seemed to change, but as the days passed, he began to feel a serenity he had never known before. His concerns, heavy as they were, seemed to dissipate, and new opportunities began to present themselves in his life. By the end of the week, he had not only overcome his financial difficulties, but he also felt closer to Allah, enveloped in His light and protection. This story demonstrates the hidden power behind such a simple yet profound practice. Allah's blessings are not limited to an immediate or visible response. They are often manifested in subtle changes in our hearts and in our outlook on life. Each recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi during these 7 days is like a drop of pure water, which gradually cleanses the heart of impurities and makes way for divine light. The role of daily recitation. By reciting Ayat Al-Kursi, you not only call upon Allah for protection, but you connect to His infinite wisdom. This allows you to raise your spiritual vibration, strengthen your faith, and attract divine mercy into your daily life. Repeating this verse over and over again becomes an act of purification. As you practice this, your material concerns and spiritual burdens seem to dissipate, and you feel an inner peace that transcends external circumstances. It is as if you are becoming more and more aware of the presence of Allah in your life, not only in theory, but in every moment of your existence. The recitation becomes an act of gratitude, a continued openness to divine guidance. After those 7 days, you are no longer the same person. Your mind and heart have been purified, your relationship with Allah has been renewed, and a new spiritual dimension has opened up before you. The profound change. This transformation process does not stop at the material level. It also touches the spiritual and emotional aspect of your being. After reciting Ayat Al-Kursi with sincerity and faith for 7 days, you are likely to notice an improvement in your ability to face trials, maintain calm in times of difficulty, and feel more connected to your Creator. It is essential to understand that it is not just the number of times you recite that makes the difference, but the intention with which you do it. Every word of this verse contains divine power, and every sincere recitation brings you closer to Allah. When you commit to repeating this practice for 7 days, you open the door to a spiritual journey that can literally change the course of your life. Ultimately, reciting Ayat Al-Kursi 100 times daily for 7 days invites you into a deep immersion in divine light, an inner journey that is both healing and transformative. Through this practice, you begin to see the world with new eyes, imbued with wisdom and serenity. 4. Pure intention and spiritual transformation. Actions are judged only by intention. Hadith. Intention is the soul of all action, especially in spiritual practice. It is not enough to simply recite the verses, pronouncing them mechanically or without thinking. True power lies in the sincere intention you put into each word. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught that actions are judged only by intention, a fundamental principle which emphasizes that the spiritual impact of an action depends directly on the intention which guides it. It is important to understand that reciting Ayat Al-Kursi is not a simple act of reading. It is an act of submission, of connection with Allah, a sacred moment where each word must be pronounced with awareness of its deep meaning. The verses themselves are powerful, but their maximum impact is achieved only when we recite them with a pure heart, sincere and attentive to the divine invocation they represent. Intention is what transforms an action into a profound spiritual experience. She is what brings the recitation to life. Without pure intention, even the most seemingly simple acts can become empty and inconsequential. Conversely, even a small gesture made with the right intention can have profound and beneficial repercussions on our soul. A question for you. How do you prepare yourself spiritually before reciting these verses? Do you believe that intention can modify the spiritual significance of a recitation? How does the purity of your heart influence the power of sacred words? Inspiring story. A man in a situation of spiritual confusion was seeking a deeper connection with Allah. Every night he recited Ayat Al-Kursi, but he did not feel the peace he hoped for. One day, a scholar advised him to stop for a moment before each recitation to refocus, say an inner prayer, and purify his heart. The scholar explained to him that sincerity of intention is what allows divine light to penetrate the heart. The man followed this advice. He began each recitation with a moment of silence, seeking to purify his thoughts and connect fully with Allah. After a few days, he noticed a profound change. Not only did he feel inner peace, but he experienced a tangible connection with divine greatness. The power of the verses had not changed. What had changed was the intention and purity of his heart. The importance of spiritual preparation. Preparing yourself spiritually before reciting the verses is essential. This is not done just by opening the Quran, but by creating an inner space of calm and reflection. This can include times of prayer, meditation, or even simple gratitude. Taking a few moments to let go of worldly thoughts and focus fully on the sacred act of reciting helps purify the intention and maximize the spiritual impact. When we stop for a moment to remember why we recite these verses, we prepare ourselves to receive the light and mercy of Allah. Intention is a vector of spiritual transformation. Every action in life has a spiritual significance, but it is the intention that determines its depth. When you recite Ayat Al-Kursi with the intention of drawing closer to Allah, seeking His protection, seeking His mercy, you open a door for spiritual transformation to occur. Truly, intention gives deeper meaning to each word, and it is this meaning that transforms the heart and soul. Purity of intention and heart influences every aspect of the recitation. If your heart is at peace, pure of resentment and pride, then every word you speak becomes a powerful invocation, a light that illuminates the soul. This is why great spiritual masters emphasize the importance of achieving this inner purity before performing acts of devotion. Sincere intention is not only a prerequisite, she is the catalyst for spiritual change. In summary, reciting Ayat Al-Kursi is not simply an outward practice, but an inner journey. The power of sacred words lies not only in their repetition, but in the clarity and purity of the intention that accompanies them. Prepare yourself spiritually, purify your heart, and expect transformation to begin to manifest. Sincere intention, accompanied by authentic devotion, is the key to opening the way to divine blessing and protection. 5. The direct link with Allah. Allah is the best of protectors. Surah At-Tawbah 951. The recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi is not limited to simple repetition of words. It becomes a powerful means of establishing an intimate spiritual connection with Allah, the Almighty. Each word, each sentence, each breath shared with these verses brings you closer to the divine light. It is a sacred act, a sincere appeal to Him, who holds all the wisdom and power of the universe. This link is not merely theoretical. It is tangible, profound, and spiritually transformative. With each recitation, you are not alone. Allah, in His infinite mercy, answers your call. This is not just any prayer. It is a silent cry of the heart that seeks the proximity of its Creator. There is a unique spiritual energy that emerges when you turn to Him in faith and humility, an energy that envelops you in His light and protection. The words of Ayat Al-Kursi are not just prayers for protection, but open doors to the presence of Allah. They establish a silent but powerful form of communion with the divine. When you repeat these verses with sincerity and humility, you feel a connection that words cannot describe. It is an indescribable feeling of peace, security, and divine love. A question for you. Have you ever felt the presence of Allah while reciting these verses? What is this feeling of closeness that we feel when we turn to Him? Does spiritual practice really bring you closer to divine light? Inspiring story. It is narrated that a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, recited Ayat Al-Kursi every day with deep faith and devotion. One evening, as he was repeating these verses, he felt a divine light invade his heart, a light so pure and bright that it seemed to fill his entire soul. He felt overwhelmed by a feeling of deep peace, as if he were enveloped in divine mercy. Since that day, he found a serenity that went far beyond simple words. He knew that his bond with Allah had strengthened, and that he was no longer alone in his trials. Each recitation of Ayat Al-Kursi became for him a living spiritual experience, a sacred moment of closeness with the Almighty. The divine light he felt guided him at every step and filled his heart with gratitude to Allah. The power of spiritual communion. Spiritual practice, when it is sincere, is not limited to a mechanical act. It becomes a path of real connection with Allah. It is in these moments of contemplation, where the heart rises towards heaven and the soul abandons itself to His mercy, that true transformation occurs. Ayat Al-Kursi is not just a prayer for protection. It is an invitation to divine proximity, a bridge between the human and the divine. It is an act of communion which reminds us that each breath, each moment of sincerity and devotion brings us closer to the one who is always present, always close. The divine call and the light of the heart. When we turn to Allah, especially with verses like Ayat Al-Kursi, we call for a deep spiritual connection. This bond is not just an act of submission, but a response of divine love and mercy. The divine light that invades the hearts of those who sincerely recite these verses transforms them from within. She lights their path, calms their fears, and grants them unshakable peace. The connection with Allah, much more than a simple formality, becomes a powerful spiritual anchor, which guides us through life's challenges. Reciting these verses is not an isolated act, but an invitation to the divine presence in our daily lives. It is in this spiritual communion that true peace resides, a peace which does not depend on external circumstances, but which is born from proximity to the one who holds all things in his hands. 6. Protection against evil. And whoever trusts in Allah, He will be sufficient for him. Surah At-Talaq 65:3. One of the most powerful aspects of Ayat Al-Kursi is its ability to offer divine protection against evil. This ayah, recorded in the Quran, is not only a word of faith, it is a spiritual fortress. This verse, with its invocations of the infinite greatness of Allah, reminds us that, whatever it may be, any form of evil, whether visible or invisible, has no hold on those who place their trust in Him. Spiritual attacks, bad energies, external influences, or even physical trials that can disrupt our balance, are neutralized by the recitation of these verses. Every word in Ayat Al-Kursi encapsulates the omnipotence of Allah, the protection of the heavens, and a shield around the individual who, in all sincerity, turns to Him. It is a divine promise based on faith, a faith that transforms our perception of the world and creates an invisible but indestructible spiritual barrier. A question for you. How do you understand this divine protection in your daily life? Do you have any personal examples where you felt protection or deliverance after reciting these verses? Inspiring story. It is said that a man faced with intense difficulties in his personal and professional life constantly felt vulnerable. His relationships were marked by conflict, and his work seemed to be continually sabotaged by unseen forces. Discouraged, he searched for answers and turned to prayer. A friend advised him to recite Ayat Al-Kursi 3 times after each prayer and to do it with conviction. At first he didn't notice an immediate change, but he persisted. A few days later, he began to notice a subtle transformation. Family conflicts were resolved, his professional relationships became more harmonious, and he felt an inner peace he had never known before. Little by little, the harmful influences seemed to dissipate. he realized that Allah's divine protection, promised in Ayat Al-Kursi, had manifested itself in his life, bringing him not only spiritual deliverance, but also an improvement in his daily life. Allah's protection does not always manifest itself in visible or spectacular ways, but often it is revealed in small, daily victories. Sometimes this protection is expressed in the form of peace of mind, a peaceful heart, or a situation that resolves unexpectedly. It is in the repetition of the sacred verses and in total trust in Allah that the true power of this protection lies. The fortress of faith is built on the constant practice of these acts of devotion, and it is through them that evil, in all its forms, is repelled. Sincerity and divine protection. Another dimension of Allah's protection lies in the intention with which these verses are recited. If the act of reciting is accompanied by sincere faith, absolute trust, then divine protection becomes even more manifest. It is not just a matter of reciting words, but of understanding them deeply and imbibing them in our heart. It is by placing our complete trust in Allah that this protection materializes in the form of serenity, physical and spiritual protection, and guidance that guides us through the storms of life. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever recites Ayat Al-Kursi after every prayer, nothing prevents him from entering paradise except death." This hadith not only highlights the importance of reciting Ayat Al-Kursi, but also the divine promise of protection and well-being. When you recite these verses, you place yourself under the divine covering of Allah, which is more powerful than any form of evil, attack, or difficulty. Reflection. Take a moment to recall a time when you had deep fear or doubt, and think about how you felt after reciting these verses. Allah's protection manifests itself in 1,000 ways, and sometimes all we need is trust and faith to see that fortress built around us. 7. Spiritual benefits and divine revelation. Those who believe and do righteous deeds, Allah will guide them by their faith and give them light. Surah An-Nur 24:35. Devotion to Ayat Al-Kursi, when practiced with sincerity and perseverance, brings profound spiritual benefits. This daily recitation, this constant connection with the divine word, becomes a channel through which the light of Allah enters your heart. The transformation that takes place is not only external, but internal. You don't just repeat words, but you immerse yourself in a spiritual experience that nourishes your soul, clears your thoughts, and sharpens your perception of reality. As the days go by, as you recite these verses, you will begin to feel a change. Negative thoughts and external influences cease to have the same power over you. You find new clarity, a fairer perspective on your challenges, and a tranquility that allows you to make informed decisions. Life's trials no longer affect you in the same way because you have established a deeper connection with divine guidance. You are guided by the light of Allah, and this light illuminates not only your heart, but also the paths around you. A question for you. What have you learned from practicing this devotion? How has the spiritual clarity you achieved changed the way you live your daily life? Inspiring story. It is said that a man who had gone through many trials in his life, family trials, professional difficulties, and inner struggles, searched for a solution to find peace. After hearing about the benefits of reciting Ayat Al-Kursi every day, he decided to start this practice. At first, he did not experience immediate changes, but he persisted, each day reciting the verse with deep concentration. In time, something profound happened. His worries, although still present, seemed less heavy. He lived his days with more calm and confidence. One day, he realized that his heart was filled with an inexplicable peace, and he began to see life situations from a different perspective. This inner change was reflected in his actions. He became more patient, gentler, and more trusting in divine goodness. The divine light promised in the Quran had truly settled in his heart. The benefits of this devotion are also manifested in receptivity to divine revelation. As you open yourself to this light, your understanding of the world becomes deeper. The wisdom of Allah's word takes on new meaning, and you feel guided with every step. Your faith is strengthened, not just by reciting the verses, but by directly experiencing the presence of Allah in your life. The light He offers you is not only that of intellectual understanding, but a light that transforms your entire being. It illuminates your actions, your character, and your relationship with others. Reflection. Divine light, according to the Quran, is that which dispels darkness. If you have ever experienced a moment of confusion or uncertainty, you know that just one divine word can light your path. Take a moment to think about how you feel when you are guided by this light. How does this revelation influence your choices, your inner peace, and your relationship with the world around you? Through the practice of reciting Ayat Al-Kursi, you are sowing the seeds of lasting spiritual transformation. This process is not instantaneous, but over time, you will find that your heart is lighter, purer, and more receptive to divine guidance. Each recitation brings you a little closer to the light of Allah, and you begin to embody this light in your daily life. Imagine yourself, every day, reciting Ayat Al-Kursi and the last 3 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah with pure intention, sincere devotion. In 7 days, your eyes open to a new reality, where divine light guides your steps, where Allah's protection envelops you, and where your heart finds deep peace. It is not a simple practice, but a spiritual path to transformation. Today you have in your hands a powerful way to reconnect with Allah and to see the world through the eyes of faith. Remember that every word you recite is an act of submission and a step closer to the light. So what change are you ready to see in your life after 7 days of sincere devotion? It's up to you to begin this spiritual journey.